right. Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome. So, my name is Michelle Ledoux, and I'm the Director of Hospitality and Restaurant Management here at the Institute of Culinary Education. Welcome to this installment of our guest lecture series. As a reminder, this demonstration is being broadcast. So, if you are watching online, please post your questions to the chat. And for our students and staff here today, please wait for the microphone so we can hear all of your questions. Our goal in these series of demos and lectures is to highlight culinary excellence of contemporary chefs and culinary entrepreneurs. In the last few months, we have hosted Chef Neil Fraser, Christopher Tompkins, entrepreneur, and the Vice President of Catering for Wolfgang Puck, Chef Eric Klein. Our guest today, Valentine Thomas, author of The Good Catch cookbook, and Chef Michael Cimarusti of Providence, Los Angeles. Valentine Thomas is a world record spearfisher-woman, freediver, and public speaker on sustainable fish and seafood. Chef Michael Cimarusti is the executive chef and owner of Connie and Ted's and the famed Providence, Los Angeles, the 2 Michelin star restaurant, and the recently awarded Green Michelin star, which is the benchmark for restaurants most committed to a more sustainable approach to gastronomy. Please join me in welcoming Valentine Thomas and Chef Michael Cimarusti. Thank you so much for both being here. It's a pleasure. We're here to talk about sustainability in terms of seafood and restaurant operations. So I turn it over to you, Chef, to give our students just an outline of what sustainability really means in the restaurant industry.
Well, I mean, I think in the restaurant industry, you know, the idea of running a restaurant that's actually sustainable, I think the definition for that is changing every day. I think, you know, in the past, at least speaking for myself, like our goals were to try to put together a menu at Providence and Connie and Ted's that was comprised of like exclusively seafood that was deemed sustainable. And we use the Monterey Bay Aquarium's seafood watch card as our benchmark for that. So if it was yellow or green on the watch card, we would use it. Nowadays, I think that the idea of running a sustainable restaurant like runs far past like those benchmarks and includes all sorts of things like, you know, the welfare and the well-being of our staff, the sustainability of the facility itself, how much plastic do we bring into the facility, and how much trash are we getting rid of at the end of the day? All sorts of things. Are we composting? You know, what are we doing to actually contribute to the direct the area that surrounds the restaurant, and how are we making our own little community more sustainable? So I think like nowadays there are just so many more factors to consider than what I thought when I like embarked on this this idea that I wanted to have or run restaurants that were sustainable. So now I see the task is much greater than I ever thought it was.
Wow. Valentine, how do you see the impact in your perspective through your career of being a free diver in the ocean and looking at sustainable products?
I think that like you said, I think that the definition is definitely changing. I believe that from a different perspective, that is not a restaurant perspective, I guess. Yeah. It's I think that now what a lot of people started doing is utilizing way more of every product that we have. Different countries have been doing it for many, many years, and I think it's finally getting here too. And I think that as a chef, it's really interesting to discover different flavors that are not necessarily in the box. A fish, by example, you can do a lot of stuff with the liver, with the milt, with of course the cheeks, the head, everything, and then you're discovering flavors that are completely outside of what you normally used to. And if you would give me a fish, I'll give you the fillet, I'll keep the rest because it's the best part for sure.
That's fantastic. Chef, how do you control the products that you're bringing into the restaurant, and how does that affect your menu and costing of your menu?
To be honest, like I'm the last guy that you want to talk to about costing, and not because I don't know how to make that work, but because especially at Providence, we don't think about those things.
Right.
The questions that I ask our vendors are never about price. They're always about quality, sourcing. You know, how is the fish caught? Where does it come from? If you know who caught it, what was the catch method? Like those are the things that I discuss with our vendors. I don't discuss cost. And like we're lucky enough at Providence that we can pay whatever we have to pay to get a certain level of product, and we have guests that are willing to pay for that experience.
Right.
And I honestly, I think that's like the like part of the value that we deliver in the restaurant is that we make choices. I make choices, and the chefs that work with me make choices to field, you know, a collection of like the very, very best ingredients that we can possibly find, and then we, you know, try to present them to you in a delicious way and in a beautiful way and in a beautiful setting, and so that kind of frees me from the need to worry about what things cost.
Right.
But I understand that's not normal. But what I think is that, like, as a chef, especially as a young chef, like you want to try to put yourself in a situation where you have that freedom, you know, because even in a restaurant that doesn't charge the kind of prices that we charge, you can get to that point. You know what I mean? Where you can have a relationship with your guests where they see the value in what you're offering, regardless of what the price happens to be, and that will allow you to work with the kind of ingredients that you really want to work with.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and I guess to piggyback to what I said earlier, it's also by kind of thinking out of the box and try using different things, you can reduce your cost also massively. It's by ordering a fish whole instead of only ordering fillets, by example, you're going to increase your yield by at least 30%. And then you're going to be able to utilize the belly, again, the head, all that stuff, so that you will create something that has incredible flavor, but at the same time, you will also really make quite a lot of good savings just by doing that. So it's
how does that impact Connie and Ted's?
Well, I mean, at Connie and Ted's, like because the price point's a lot lower.
Yeah.
But we also only work with domestic seafood there. We don't bring in any fish from outside the 50 United States. And so, that there's obviously, savings in that, like where you're not flying fish all over the world. We work with a lot of local fish, like, here in California, like we're blessed with all sorts of species. It doesn't matter what you want to work with, whether it's, if you want to work with tuna, we've got that. We have bluefin and we have yellowfin that are landed here. We have albacore that are landed here in California. If you want to work with salmon, unfortunately this year was not a good year because they closed the king salmon fishery here in California. But in years past, we had an incredible king salmon season here in California. We have rockfish, that's the fish that I'm holding in that photo. And it's the demonstration that I did the last time I cooked on campus, which is a very affordable fish, no matter what kind of restaurant you run. And they're caught here, landed in Santa Barbara and Ventura and Oceanside and San Pedro, all up and down the coast of Southern California. So we have black cod here. It's one of the most sought after fish, also known as sablefish. One of the most sought after fish in the world, landed right here in California. Sardines, anchovies, squid, crabs of all sorts, you name it, we have it here in California. And the fact that we're able to harvest those fish right off our coast means that they're less expensive. And we make use of all that fish at Connie and Ted's. And, I think it's also important to differentiate between cheap fish and fish that is well priced. You know what I mean? Like cheap fish is seldom good because cheap fish is usually almost always farm raised. And fish that's raised specifically to enter the market at a certain price point is never of good quality, period. I'm sorry. Because people that are farming fish, that are looking to, their only end goal is to hit a certain price point. They're not worried about quality. They're also not worried about sustainability or what they're doing to the world's oceans. So try to stay away from that if you can, as a chef. Try to buy wild, try to buy local, and those two things will help you save money and will allow you to also, you know, if you're lucky enough to live in California, to field a very diverse menu.
Yeah. What exactly is farmed raised? For those that don't know, what is the impact on the ocean as you both might see that happening?
Well, farm raised is it's part of a reality, right? Now there's over 50% of the fish and seafood in the world that is coming from fish farming. So it became, with the population increasing, fish farming became a necessity. So it's really about now to be able to encourage the people who are doing it right. So we're kind of a turning point now of fish farming is going to keep going. Right now, it's predominantly in Asia. I think it's something like 98% of fish farming is coming from Asia. And a lot of those farms are not really good. In the United States, we're lucky. We're actually, the United States is the best country in the world when it comes to regulations. So that's why everything that's really local is, like you were saying, it's very positive. California is a very good example of fishery that completely collapsed and now is pretty much thriving. We're on the verge of thriving. And yeah, so when it comes to fish farm, again, it's just about, they are beautiful farms that are also outside of the US, like Baja, by example. Panama has a beautiful cobia farming. There are options out there. And it's really just about really handpicking whatever is good, because again, farming will not go anywhere. So it's really, really important right now to really put the pressure on the ones that are not doing the right thing and really create it as business for the ones that actually are doing the right thing. Otherwise, this is going to be a disaster in 20 years.
Yeah, Chef, is that?
Yeah, and I mean, absolutely. I think, you know, here in the United States, we probably do a much better job than the rest of the world in terms of regulating the fish that are farm raised off of our coasts. There's actually like a big federal movement here recently in the United States where offshore fish farming is probably going to become a reality in the United States, which means that fish will be raised in international waters off our coasts. And there are all sorts of sites around the country on both coasts, the Atlantic and the Pacific, that have been identified as places that are, you know, favorable for that kind of business activity. As Valentine said, it's a reality. It's going to continue if we want to feed a world of 7 billion people, and many of whom rely on protein that comes from the sea as part of their daily sustenance. It's something that we have to do, but it's also something we have to do bearing in mind the fact that, you know, to farm raise fish to the detriment of wild fish, it helps no one, you know, and certainly not the world's oceans. And so that's the problem that needs to be solved here, is how do you feed 7 billion people using aquaculture as a tool to help make that a reality without destroying the natural environment that's existed on this planet for, you know, eons.
It's definitely not there yet.
No, it's not there yet.
They're working with like algae feeding and stuff like an insect feeding to some species like trout or tilapia, or even aquaponics, where the one you have fish and then the fish poops and then it goes into feeding some veggies and then the veggies are going back. Anyways, it's really fantastic. A bit harder to scale for billions of people, but it's getting there, slowly but surely.
What's your recommendation for students out there in their day-to-day life? How do they find a way to connect to that sustainability and keeping it affordable for them on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I think, like I said earlier, the benchmark that we use at the restaurant is the seafood watch card from the Monterey Bay Aquarium. You know, and there's an app that you can put on your phone, and the app will give you guides that are specific to the region that you're working in. And it'll help you, put together a menu of items that are sustainable. I think that's the best thing. But I mean, there are all sorts of ways you can exert your influence over the market when it comes to sustainability. Like one of the things we're trying to do now at Providence is try to eliminate as much plastic coming through the back door as possible. Also, like styrofoam and all the like packaging and everything. Like we're working on a thing with our vendors, our seafood vendors, where they bring all of our deliveries in reusable totes, so that when they bring the fish to us, we unload everything, they take the totes back with them, and there's no trash, because those totes they can wash, reuse again over and over and over again, and we don't have you know, at the end of the day, 20 or 30 massive styrofoam boxes to deal with. That just, you know, just adds to the waste that we create on a daily basis. You know, talking to our vendors about, like, we want to use extra virgin olive oil, but one of the prerequisites that we're going to make for that is going to be that it has to be in tin, not a plastic container, because more plastic is just more plastic. You know, we just keep kicking that problem down the road. But if we insist as chefs and consumers and people that are out there buying in the market, that we want to, if you're going to use, if we're going to buy your product, you're going to put it in glass or you're going to put it in tin, or we won't buy it. That will change people's minds. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, you know, because it doesn't do them any good if they have a product that they can't sell. And if we all collectively as chefs, we start putting our foot down on issues like that, it will make change. It will, believe me. I mean, that's the best way to exert any kind of force over the market, is to just stop buying. You know what I mean? You can't get me a product in tin. I will find it from someone else, period. It will make people move.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? People will change. And these are some of the efforts that we're involved in, like outside of just regular deciding, you know, what kind of fish we want to put on the menu on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think chefs are definitely trendsetters when it comes to different, also just not flavors, but also different type of fish species. I'm pretty sure the majority of people in LA never had cobia or that type of fish that nobody ever heard of. But then again, if they come to a restaurant, they come to your restaurant and you made a fish for them, and then they're going to remember that name, and then they're going to be able to buy it. So also, it's whatever you put in the menu is whatever will stay in people's minds. So if you stay away from more mainstream species and really try to, God, I'm repeating myself. If you go outside the box again and then try to, when I started fishing, I discovered species I didn't even know existed. And some are a bit weird and some are like more mainstream, but then I discovered flavors and fish that I'd never know existed. And I ate fish that are just so fantastic. And that's just by trying different things. And then there's a lot of stuff outside of salmon, sea bass, and halibut.
Yeah, and so many of our students are, you know, at a pivotal moment in their lives where they're going to make choices and things like that. And Valentine, tell them a little bit about your career, because you started off not in this field. Your career took a big changing point.
Yes, to say the least. Actually, on my first day of law school, they told me that a law degree could lead to anything. I don't think they imagined this, but it still did. And I think that when I started spearfishing, and that's when I realized that there was a lot of problems with the ocean, and that my connection with my food was just really not there. I never really realized or even thought about anything. When I was buying fish at the grocery store, I'm just going to get the one that looks fresh, that doesn't look too smelly, and that is kind of cheap. And then I never really thought about anything else. But then after that, when you spend time with the ocean, so if there's as a practice, if I can also encourage to try farms, try to really go, or even go try to understand food. That way you can develop something that's really respectful, that you cannot understand why you're really tasting it. So yeah, anyways, I moved to London, and then I worked in a hedge fund. 2016, I decided that cooking was different. I wanted to change the way I see fish and seafood and try to do different things. Here I am.
Here you are. I love it. And so, Chef, when you think back to your early career, do you have any inspiration for the culinary students in terms of, you know, paths that they may take?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, like now, I think it's a great time to be entering this industry, because this industry just had a major shakeup in the form of a global pandemic, which changed, like so much about our world, but it really, really changed the restaurant world dramatically in a very short period of time. Like it changed restaurant world changed more in the last 3 years than it did in the previous 30 that I've been a part of it. And I think in many ways for the better. I think as a cook, like nowadays, like you're entering this field, like you're in a much better place. I think you're going to be making higher wages. You're going to be hopefully treated much better in the kitchens that you work in. You're going to see more women in the kitchen now. You're going to see greater diversity in the kitchen now. You're going to see people that are cooking more, cooking food that is more reflective of who they are and what their culture is. Whereas, in the past, to find the funding that you need to open a restaurant and make a name for yourself in this field, like the paths were much more narrow than they are nowadays. Like I think, especially in big cities like Los Angeles, there are room for all sorts of, young, ambitious chefs that want to, make their mark in the scene. Whereas, in the past, I think that the paths were much more narrow, much more rocky, and there were, a very select few that made it to the very, very, top of this field. So I think, like I said, you're entering this field at a really, really good time. And I also feel like just cooking in general has just gotten so much better in our country. Like from when I started to where we are now, when I started like as a young kid wanting to finding a good job in New York City, like the list was very short.
Right.
And all the names on that list were French. All the restaurants, like every one of them. And nowadays, like if you wanted to go and work at a restaurant in New York or in Los Angeles or whatever, you've got all sorts of like great opportunities from like a wide range of cuisines and cultures that you could choose from, where you could go and really learn something from a very, very talented chef. So, I mean, I think that's all for the good. Even a food truck, of course.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, nowadays you see people like writing about, pop-ups that people are doing in their backyards. That never would have made it to the food section of the Los Angeles Times 30 years ago, or the New York Times, or whatever. It's just so much different now, which is great. Yeah.
Fantastic. Valentine, where do you do most of your spear fishing?
Florida, I'd say mainly. I just moved to Austin, which of course I don't really do too much of a lake diving there. But Florida, my fishing really evolved at the start. Of course, it kind of became first getting really big fish and try to get the biggest fish. And I travel a lot to do that. And now it's shifted a lot to subsistence, I guess. So I don't buy fish. I catch during the summer. I'm going to go fish a few times. I'm going to fill up my freezer, and I have enough fish for the rest of the winter. And then during the winter, so now it's just started, I'm going to go hunt a couple of animals, which is going to feed me all the way to the next year also. So it's really all about, if it's edible, pass it in front of me.
That's fantastic.
It's just enough for what I need.
How do you choose the fish down there? How long? So you guys, she can hold her breath for 6 minutes. Or you can hold your breath as you free dive down there for 6 minutes, correct?
Yes.
How do you achieve something like that?
I would like to tell you it's super hard and I work so hard for it, but it's really not. It's just about practicing. It's actually very mental. So it's really about when you're in the water and you're holding your breath. Naturally, you could probably do it for about 3-4 minutes, but it's your brain that's going to get weaker first. So as you're not exhaling, you're going to accumulate CO2 inside of your body, and then that's going to send a signal to your brain that says, I need to breathe, I need to breathe, I need to breathe. And it's going to start probably panic a little bit, and you're going to go and try to swim back to the surface. So it's really about calming yourself and then making sure that you're holding your breath and you're staying as calm as possible and you're looking around you. That's also the beauty of free diving when you're spearfishing, is you kind of become part of the ocean for a few minutes. So you either what you call blue water fishing when you're miles and miles away from shore, and you just you feel like you're floating into space, and you're waiting for a tuna or a mahi or a wahoo, something kind of big to show up. Or you do refishing when you go all the way to the bottom and you wait, and you're kind of hunting, you're kind of waiting for a fish that's going to get curious enough to come close to you, poor bastard. And then that's kind of it. But I feel like it's a very selective form of fishing because you see exactly what's in front of you. So I can be the more sustainable fish within its species. It's not. I know there's a trend that's just saying that smaller fish are actually more sustainable, but studies are more showing that it's average size of its species. So you don't want something that's super big, you don't want something super small. So let's say the tuna, by example, a sustainable tuna would be probably around, depending on the species, would probably maybe around 100 pounds, by example. Too big, fish become very, very heavy breeders, so you don't want to kill that. And then when it's too small, you don't want them to, within its species, obviously, and then you don't want it to be ready yet. It's kind of for, and then sustainability is fish that can be sustainable in California cannot be sustainable on New Jersey. So this is where the locality, that word, sorry, I'm French, is really about, it's very, very specific of where you are. I mean, fish can be sustainable. Talking about fish and line fishing is sustainable, and then another way is not sustainable. It's so complicated. But I think then Monterey Bay Aquarium actually does a good job of do a resume out of that, summarizing out of it. I sound much more French.
You sound great. Chef, so recently you were awarded the Green Michelin star, which is a wonderful and rare thing to have. How do you feel about that, and how did you think you achieved that?
Yeah, well, I mean, actually, I think Michelin, they screwed up, and they should give it.
Yeah.
But we
True, right?
For the last 3 years, they could have given it to us. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that, like, from the farm that we have, or not farm, we have a garden on the rooftop. We keep bees on the rooftop. We, of course, have always tried to maintain a menu that was sustainable in terms of the choices that we made. So I don't know what took them so long, but definitely I'm happy with it. I'm happy that they finally gave it to us. I honestly think it's our PR team that made them finally wake up and take notice, because we really, when it came to that kind of stuff, we kind of I guess kept it to ourselves a little bit too much.
Right.
Because one thing that I try not to do within the restaurant is be too preachy about the choices that we make. They're important to me, and and that's why we do the things that we do. But we don't, if you're a guest in the dining room, we're not going to talk to you about all the reasons why we're serving rockfish or Alaskan halibut or black cod or whatever. It's just everything that's on that menu fits into these parameters, but we're not gonna preach your ear off about it while you're sitting in the restaurant. But our PR team was really good about getting the word out, and then that I think that's what prompted the Michelin guide to give us the green stuff. But I mean, I think it's a great thing that they have finally started to recognize the efforts that chefs around the world are making to push the restaurant industry forward in terms of sustainability, because it's high time that we did something along those lines. Again, I think all you guys in this room, if you get to the point where you're going to be a purchaser, or running your own restaurant, whatever, the choices that you make are important, and those choices change things. And not only because, as I said before, your dollars and the way you spend them mean something in the market, but also as an example, consumers, they watch what chefs do, and trends start in high-end fine dining restaurants, and then trickle down throughout the rest of the industry, and then eventually they make it into your home. And that's when real change takes place. But everybody has to be doing a little something. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be you don't have to take on all of these different things. You do what you can, and that's what matters. You know, if everyone's pulling in the same direction to that end, it means it makes real change in this world. So any little thing you can do is helpful. I mean, one of the things you can do is just walk around with a water bottle. Don't buy a plastic.
Don't have this. Sorry.
Yeah, not every single day, like 2 or 3. Buy one water bottle and fill it up at home, and fill it up when you're at the restaurant, or fill it up when you're here in class. And, I mean, just little things.
Aren't you supposed to eat in drink in the kitchen in like those big plastic
Deli
containers
cups.
that you put your?
Don't do that.
Don't do that either. I've had this thing for 5 years. Like, it's beat up, but it goes everywhere with me. And you know, I mean, it's a little thing that that everybody in this room can do, and then try to commit to not going into the convenience store and buying another plastic bottle. Try. You know, it's honestly not that hard. Compost. Try doing that at home. You know what I mean? And in Los Angeles County now, everything can go in the compost. Yard trimmings, table scraps, everything. That, you know, the amount of greenhouse gases that enter the atmosphere as a result of food waste are amount to more than the entire cattle farming industry in the United States. So all the food that you throw away is more impactful to this environment than the cattle industry in the United States. So think about that. You know, at the end of the night, you know, whenever you're clearing the table, whether it's here at school or in your home, you know, put it in the compost bin. Don't put it in the trash. Little things. We can all do little things. And every one of us does something small, and it amounts to something really big. That's how movements get started, and that's how real change happens.
Fantastic. So I think, you know, we all can do.
Composting.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Let's all do it, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the city
eat
offers it to
leftovers.
us now. As a
French,
chef,
I'm an asshole.
as a chef and a restaurateur, like, make sure if you're working in a restaurant, how many people have a job outside the restaurant, outside school right now? Do you have a restaurant? Do your restaurants have compost bins? Every one of them? Do you know that for a fact? Huh?
I know at least one does.
Yeah, but then ask your chef, how come we don't have a compost bin? The city will bring you one for free and put it in your parking lot, wherever you keep the rest of your, you know, trash cans, and they'll come and empty it. And you should have a green bin. Do you have a green bin here at school in every classroom? You should have a green bin in every school, in every classroom. Because I'm sorry, I'm not calling anybody out. I mean, I'm calling everybody out, but I'm not calling everybody out in a bad way. No, but, you know, you get a green bin, you know, all those onion peelings, all the carrot peelings, all the potato peelings, everything, throw it in there. Just one day as an experiment while you're working through class, in the skills class. Just every single piece, every single little scrap of food that you would otherwise throw in the trash, put it in a mixing bowl on your station. Just keep it there all day long, regardless of what the instructor tells you to do. I'm telling you, just do it. Or prep when you're prepping at home and you're cooking a big meal for friends and family. Just keep a mixing bowl on your station, and through every single thing that you would normally throw in the trash that's food waste, throw in there and see where you are at the end of the day. I guarantee it's going to be like this, a mixing bowl. I mean, and then you multiply that across every single one of you in this room, and then think of what that means. It means a lot. Little things like that mean a lot. So, you know, it's little efforts like that. Also, like, ask your vendor when you buy dry goods that you want compostable plastic wrap. These are the kind of changes that we need to make. Because if all of you guys, once you get out there and you start purchasing in a restaurant, you start buying compostable plastic wrap, that makes a difference. People that produce plastic are going to sit up and take notice and go, you know what, we need to up our game. We need to figure out a way to make this product compostable. It's a huge thing. But, you know, whatever. It's all baby steps. These are little things that we're just starting to do now, you know, and these are little things that as an industry, we need to make the norm. Because if we do, we're making a positive impact. We're moving the needle in the right way, not the wrong way, as an industry.
So what if they're being told it's too expensive, we can't do it?
It's not expensive. It really isn't. Like, I mean, we switched over to compostable plastic wrap at the restaurant. Wraps just as well as everything else that we've ever used. Costs, you know, a couple dollars more. So you know, charge $1 more for iced tea or something in you know, like, whatever. Like, I mean, you'll figure out a way to cover that cost, or buy more containers with lids and then you don't need to wrap them. You know, that's another thing you There's all sorts of ways that, because, a stainless steel container or even a plastic container that you could compost or recycle if you had to, with a lid, that will last you for 2 or 3 years. Imagine all the plastic wrap that takes out of the equation, So there are all sorts of like little things you can do that don't necessarily have to cost you a whole lot of money. Composting doesn't cost you anything because the city of Los Angeles will come and pick it up, even at your house.
All right, everyone. That's what we're going to do, right?
It's not hard.
Right?
Yeah, green bins on order all over the school. Oh,
All
what a
over.
beautiful thing that would be. Seriously, guys.
Yeah.
I work for Office Services, and we support sustainability and jobs.
Right.
Oh,
Yes, we have one in our.
oh, fantastic. Wow. Fantastic. Thank you for that information. Love it.
Very true.
Very true. So we can all make changes, right? Chef, tell the students how you select vendors and which seafood vendors. And
Mhm.
I also love how you spoke about the ikejime style of
Yes.
seafood, and tell them what that's all about. And Valentine, are you involved in that at all?
Mine's a little bit more gore, but yeah. I do it in a knife in the water, but
Yeah.
it's sorry. But it's night and day. If you find a vendor that actually does ikejime in the boat, your fish is gonna last longer. It's gonna taste much better. Even species that sometimes can be not that great, you're gonna completely transform the quality of any fish by doing that.
For sure. Local vendors, and we have a few. We also have vendors in other places, in other states. For local fish, we buy some of that fish direct from fishermen. We have a guy, Eric Hodge, that we take at least 1 or 2 deliveries a week from him. It depends on local weather, but he kills all his fish ikejime, or at least all the fish that he brings to us.
By the way, ikejime is when if you don't know what it is, I think quick parenthesis probably, is you desensitize the fish through the brain. Or you can also, this is going to be, sorry, this is pretty bad. Anyway, we can have like a small stick and you knock the fish out, and you make a cut in the tail, you break the tail, and then you will insert a very small piece of metal into the spine, which just kind of the fish is not going to do this or nervous system. So what you're doing is you're preventing acid lactic buildup inside of the fish, and then you can just preserve the fish for much longer. Sorry for the people in vegan program.
Yeah, it's a great technique. Does anybody here fish? Is anyone a fisherman? Yeah, if you know AFTCO, American Fishing Tackle Company. Oh, cool. If you're a spearfisherman, you can buy these from AFTCO, and they have ikejime kits. You make a hole in the fish's head right into the brain, and then you can feed a wire either through that hole that you made in the head, or as Valentine was saying, through the tail, what they call a circuit breaker, which just stops all nervous activity from the brain to the muscles of the fish. And then you bleed the fish out. And once you've done that, you preserve the fish in the most perfect way possible. Also, you've killed the fish in the most humane way possible, which is another important aspect of ikejime.
You can also buy one on Amazon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Amazon. But anyway, it's a great practice. It helps you preserve the catch, as Valentine was saying. And we for instance, on Saturday, we got 200 pounds of rockfish from Eric Hodge, who's a local fisherman, fishes out of Santa Barbara. And every one of the fish that he delivered to us was killed ikejime style. Then we clean them out, we hang them in a dry ager at the restaurant, and we can serve that fish all week long. And there'll be no deterioration. As a matter of fact, like the fish of that 200 pounds, we'll probably still be serving it on Friday, and Friday will be the best day to eat it. It's like,
wow.
The quality just actually improves, especially but only if they're killed ikejime. Because I could take a rockfish that was killed on the same day on the same boat that was not killed ikejime style and do all of those same things to it, and by Friday it's not going to be as good as the fish that was killed ikejime style. As a matter of fact, it might not even be good at all.
Wow.
It would definitely lose color, which ikijime fish do not. It will lose flavor. The meat itself will kind of have an off flavor after a couple of days. Whereas if you kill it ikijime style, none of those things happen. So it's a great thing. But in terms of like vendors, like honestly, the most important thing with any vendor that you have, whether it's dry goods or meat or fish or vegetables, is a relationship, a real relationship, where they understand what your standards are and you understand, exactly what you expect from them. And once you get to that point, like when you know a relationship is really working is if you place an order with someone and they call you in the morning and say, look, I have the fish, but you don't want it. It's not good enough for you. That's when you know you have the real relationship with a vendor. When somebody will tell you the truth about the product that you've ordered. And that's the most important thing. So, any kind of vendor that you have, my advice to you is meet them face to face. Don't let them just be a voice on a telephone. Sit across the room from them, walk them around the facility that they're delivering to, make sure they understand who you are and what you're looking for. And that's the start of a relationship. Most of the fish vendors that I have, I've known for, more than 20 years, ever since I moved to Los Angeles. And we still use most of those guys today.
Also, I think to add to this, when it comes to fish preservation, is moisture is always going to be your biggest enemy. That's why dry aging now become a really big thing when it comes to fish. I dry age a yellowtail for 29 days and I ate it raw.
Wow.
So the fish was never, it smelled really good. It was amazing. It lost a lot of the water weight, so it kind of shrank a little bit, but I still ate it raw and it was still good after 29 days of not being frozen or anything. So it's even when it comes to fish that you have are in the fridge, you can wrap it in paper towel and anything like that. And then as soon as you keep the moisture away, you're going to increase the shelf life of a fish for a few days. And it makes really a massive, massive difference. Dry aging is an art that's very complex and very complicated. If you have time in LA, you should definitely see the Joint Seafood. I couldn't tell you where it is in LA, but it's in LA somewhere.
Valley.
But the guy is fantastic. His name is Leeway. He's super good. He loves to talk to everybody. And you're going to try the best fish ever. It's really, really good. With nothing on it, not prepared. I'm sure your fish is better.
Yeah. I think that's also like the point that Valentine makes is important, that about moisture being the enemy, because I think like when I came up, and probably for you guys, like what everybody tells you to do is like, bury the fish in ice, right? That's what people tell you to do. It's actually not really the best way to hold fish, and for all sorts of reasons, not the least of which being that ice is very heavy. So if you take like a fish that's already dead and you throw it under a big pile of ice, when you pull it out, it's going to be crushed. Muscle is not going to be the same as it was before you put it in there. So really, I mean, all you need is cold air, cold. That's it. I mean, when you go to a sushi bar, they're not holding the fish in ice, are they? As a matter of fact, yeah, it's just sitting there in a refrigerated case. No, actually, they don't even have forced air in those cases. It's just like ambient temperature, where the temperature is held by water passing through pipes that is, hyper refrigerated. That's how those sushi cases work. And that's really the best way to hold fish in places like that. In a dry ager, which we have 4 of them at the restaurant. We keep a couple for meat and a couple for fish. And the relative humidity inside those things is like 85%, but they don't have a fan like blowing air over the fish or the meat. It's just like you set where you want the humidity to be based on whatever it is that you're aging, and then it'll hold temperature and humidity at exactly that level as long as the cabinet is functioning the way it's supposed to. And as Valentine said, you can age fish for really long periods of time, and the larger the fish is, the longer you can age it. We got swordfish from a local guy in San Diego last year, which the season is just about to start really for California swords. And we didn't even touch the fish for 2 weeks. We just hung it for 2 weeks, didn't even, did nothing with it until it reached the 2-week point. And then we started to use it. And, we used it for an entire week. So by the time we served the last piece, the fish had already been in the house for 3 weeks, and it was really just reaching its peak at that point. So it really is a whole new world. And I have to say, Leeway at the Joint helped me out immensely when we first started dry aging fish, because I was a total newbie. And And yeah, and to be able to lean on coworkers or people that are in this industry for information and advice and knowledge is also a real blessing. And I think you'll find like the real ones are people that are just open and will answer whatever question you have. So I'd say that's also an important lesson to learn as a chef, is to always be open to learning new things. The moment you put blinders on is the moment you start to slip back. And it's the moment where the rest of the industry will just pass you by. You just always have to be open to learning.
For sure. A couple of years ago, I caught a swordfish, not by spearfishing, because you would have probably speared me back. They're very dangerous. But I ate the spine for the first time, and I cut it, and I ate the bone marrow, and it was just, the bone marrow was like, it was salty. It was such a beautiful taste, and then all the meat around the bone, after it was put into the oven, it tasted like bacon. It was just fantastic new flavors that I couldn't even guess, not even a little bit.
Wow, that's amazing.
But quick thing that I would want to mention is frozen fish. I know a lot of people think, especially customers, they think that frozen fish is not as good as fresh fish. With technology right now, especially with fishing boats, a lot of them have freezers on board, which means that sometimes a frozen fish can be more fresh than an actually fish that's never been frozen. It's harder to transport. Sometimes it can be more expensive. So sometimes a frozen fish, you can serve a product that's even more better quality than a fresh fish would be. So just a side note that I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, especially with cryogenic freezing. Like now that, in Japan, that's like been a thing for years where big seafood wholesalers will super freeze bluefin, and there are fishing vessels out there in the ocean, as Valentine was saying, that also have the ability to do that. Yeah, I mean, there's no deterioration in terms of color or flavor. And the added benefit to that is that, wild fish, as we all know, do have parasites, and super freezing them kills all of that.
Excellent. So Valentine has her cookbook here. Tell us about the process of getting your beautiful book made. The Good Catch.
Do it.
Yeah.
It was a couple of years process, and I was getting a lot of questions about fish, so I want to create a little bit of the first part is a lot of explanation of how to utilize fish. It's definitely aimed for home cook people. And a lot of it is because the majority of Americans don't eat enough seafood. So I really want to push and try to use fish kind of in a meat way to make sure that people don't feel as intimidated when it comes to fish. So some recipes are very simple, such as how to cook a perfect fish with a skin on, to have a beautiful crispy skin. And then again, some other ones are really how to see meat as something, fish, as something very approachable. So I have like a pad thai or buttermilk fried fish, and really making sure that people are like, I can do that because I've done it with chicken before. And and then some a little bit more out the box, such as fried fish melt, which, do you want to explain what fish melt is?
No,
it's sperm.
You can take that one.
It's fish sperm. It's actually really, really good. And then the skin is kind of to a little bit push people a little bit to get out of their comfort zone and try to do something different. And the pictures are very pretty too.
Mm-hmm.
Very pretty. So we will have these up at the front for any of you that would like to purchase these for a great price. And Valentine will sign that for you. I think maybe one or two, right?
Yes.
A lot, right?
How much on it, Michelle?
$22. It's a really good price that we got. So thank you for getting that through your publisher. Appreciate
Of
that.
course.
Wonderful. And I think now we would like to open it up to questions. If anybody has any questions they would like to ask Valentine or Chef Cimarusti. We have a question right here. Oop.
We're going to talk about.
Yeah, just go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
So in your careers and your personal fishing, do you have any thoughts on mercury levels in fish? Is that a big importance to you, or has that been a source of interest with clients and customers? And what are your thoughts on that going into the future?
Personally, I don't give it a lot of thought, because I think like the levels that you have to consume of fish to have any kind of adverse effects are pretty high. Most people don't eat anywhere near that amount of fish. Also, if you diversify what you're eating that comes from the ocean, and you're eating, if you eat a lot of fish that are lower in the trophic level and fewer fish that are higher in the trophic level, you'll be consuming less mercury anyway. So eat some small fish, eat some medium-sized fish. Every once in a while, eat a big fish, and you'll be okay. The higher you go in the food chain, the more mercury concentrates in the flesh.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think very few species, such as marlin, shark, or really, really big tuna would have higher concentration. So that's why you suggest eat those species maybe twice a month max. But it's the only people I know who got mercury poisoning, and I know two. The first one was a swordfish captain, and he ate it every single day for about 4 months. And he started crying for no reason.
Oh, God.
And then the second one, they were eating sushi every single day. So again, you have to have a very unbalanced diet to do that. But it's the problem of people not having eating enough fish is way more important than the people that having mercury issues, because the health benefits of eating seafood is immensely bigger than the very, very small risk of having mercury poisoning, especially for women. Like if you're pregnant or eating seafood, there's a new study that came out, which is fascinating. The woman who ate seafood, not raw, don't quote me on that, but who ate seafood when they were pregnant, they had an IQ raise in their kids by about 7 to 10 points, which is massive.
Wow.
Massive, massive. So it's crucial definitely for child development also.
Wow. Amazing.
Don't be scared of eating seafood because of mercury, because
Everyone's going to start eating.
you're missing out. And you'd be smarter.
Yeah. Any questions? Oh, we have a couple over there.
For vegetarians, do you know if there are any benefits eating like algae and seaweeds that would be like comparable compared to seafood? Like omegas.
See, I know seafood is really good for you, but I wouldn't know. I'm very animal protein heavy, but would you know that?
Well, I mean, I know seaweeds they're good for you. I don't think you derive that much protein from them, as far as I know, or fats. But there are fats in seaweeds for sure. Because I mean, there's even a move afoot to use algae and seaweed to create petroleum type products.
True. I think kelp
So
you have
there's
to be
definitely
careful.
fats in there, but yeah. I mean, seaweeds. There are some that are really good, very delicious, obviously. Yeah.
Chef Cimarusti.
Yes.
I was wondering how exactly you found your love for seafood. Sorry.
Yeah, that's a good question. I've been a fisherman ever since I was a little kid. As long as I can remember, I've been fishing, and it's I don't know. It's, as Valentine said, in the profound kind of relationship that she has to the ocean, which she discovered being in the ocean. I feel like I have one that's very similar to that, very deep and very profound, from being on the ocean. Fishing at the shore, fishing on docks with my grandfather and my father, fishing on boats. It's just, it's such an incredible, magical place where, I don't know, I've always just gravitated towards it. And I think, this obsession that I have for fishing, slowly worked its way into a career where I cook fish. But I mean, really, working exclusively with wild fish as we do, wild fin fish, I get that same sense of wonderment. Every time we get a new delivery from Eric Hodge or any one of the fishermen that we work with, to me, it's almost as exciting as pulling it over the rail myself. It's just, and for a while there, I was a licensed commercial California fisherman, commercial fisherman, because I like to, I fish as much as I can, and I like to fish with this guy, Eric. But since he's a commercial fisherman, he can only have commercial fishermen on his boat. So I had to get a commercial license. And I did that for a few years, which was just great, I never sold a fish, so I guess I wasn't really a full-fledged commercial fisherman, but it was nice just to have that license, it was very cool. But yeah, I just love it. And if you haven't fished here in California, California is a phenomenal place to fish. And in recent years, even more so. And this year, which is supposed to become an El Nino year, will be insane. Once El Nino hits, it'll be insane. Because in past years when we've had El Ninos, the fishing has been amazing, and it brings up pelagic fish from Mexico that don't normally find themselves in our waters. And so if it's a good El Nino, you'll be catching all sorts of crazy fish here in California. So exciting and wonderful.
Questions over here?
I'll bring the mic to you. I know you guys definitely touched on it a bit about composting, but I had a specific question about composting as a home chef in an apartment with not a lot of space. Kind of what access do we have to like composting that's kind of compatible for a apartment, basically?
There are like things you can buy that you can put on your counter that will start the process of composting, or you could maybe keep it on your stoop if you have a, or if you have a balcony or something, keep it out there. That will start the process. But you could probably also, I mean, in an apartment complex, I would think that you could probably talk to the people that manage that property and get them to bring a composting bin to, you know, wherever your trash is processed. Because like I said, the city of Los Angeles, like they want Angelinos to be composting. And it's not that hard. I mean, especially if you have access to a big bin, you know, you can start the process in your apartment in a little thing. I mean, I used to have like a little stainless steel one that I kept on my counter at home, and then we would, you know, when it would fill up, we just take it, put it in with our yard waste, which you can do now too in California, and it'll get picked up and taken to wherever, you know, the larger composting site is. But you know, or you know, maybe if the school starts a composting program, you just collect it at home and bring it here. All you guys. Yeah.
Questions? Yeah.
It surprisingly doesn't smell either. You would think that it would smell, but it actually doesn't really smell in your house.
So this question's for Chef Michael Cimarusti. Two things. When you were talking about sustainability, are there less common ways at the restaurant that you haven't mentioned that people just don't think about to be more sustainable besides sourcing sustainable proteins, compost, and asking your vendors for different containers?
No, I mean, I think, you know, the welfare of the workforce is another important aspect of sustainability that we're, you know, we're trying to take on at the restaurant. I mean, you know, like I said, that word is so all-encompassing. You know, the word sustainability, it just means so many things. But I think, like I touched on the majority of those things. You know, maintaining a small garden at the restaurant, I think we touched on briefly, but also keeping bees, like having pollinators be part of the restaurant. We also have a little house for bats up there on the rooftop garden. Actually, our rooftop garden is a national, like a designated national wildlife sanctuary, because we have water for pollinators. We have all the plants that we maintain up there, and we have the habitat for bats. So, I mean, those are some of the things that we do that, you know, I don't know. It's all part of a little kind of tiny little ecosystem that we have going on there. We also have like a big fig tree at the restaurant. And like right now, if you come to the restaurant, we're serving a cheese course with the figs that are harvested from right outside. And then when the figs are done, then we take all the leaves off the figs and we salt them and we preserve them for the coming year. And fig leaves are an incredible ingredient to have in your pantry if they're preserved. You can make oils out of them, and a beautiful green oil that a fig leaf will give you that has this incredible aroma of coconut, which is a crazy thing. And then you can use a fig leaf for all sorts of different applications, whether it's like wrapping a protein, using it to actually salt a protein, like slicing sashimi and then laying it on salted fig leaves to give it a little flavor. So there's all sorts of little things that we do at the restaurant that that make us, you know, a little bit more sustainable. We also have in all the employee break rooms and restrooms beautiful murals painted by a local artist named Eric Junker, whose work you see like all over town if you look. And that's just something that we did during our recent renovation to kind of like beautify the back of the house areas that people don't see, that are, you know, specifically to the benefit of our workforce.
And then my second question, I know Valentine had talked about a turning point in her career. Did you have a moment where you felt like there was a turning point towards sustainability?
Yes, and it was out there for all the world to see, because there used to be a magazine, which many of you guys probably haven't heard of, called Gourmet Magazine. It was a publication that was, printed here in the United States. And they used to have critics that wrote about New York, and they had critics that wrote about California. And Jonathan Gold used to write. Everybody know Jonathan Gold? The late,
They all do.
Pulitzer Prize winner. He used to write about New York, which is odd because you always equate Jonathan with Los Angeles, but at the time he was writing for Gourmet in New York. And there used to be a writer out here, and her name was Caroline Bates. And she covered restaurants in California. And right after Providence opened, she wrote a review of the restaurant. And it was a very favorable review. But one of the things that she talked about in the review was that at the time when she visited, I did a special with bluefin tuna. And bluefin at the time was in trouble in the United States. It was not deemed sustainable. And, this is 18 years ago, mind you, when we first opened the restaurant. But anyway, so I had it on the menu, and she called me out for it. She said, while I can't remember exactly what she said, but to paraphrase, she talked about how much she enjoyed the meal, but she just couldn't bring herself to order the bluefin because of its status of not being a sustainable fish. And I read that, and I was like, it was a moment where I was like, this is not good. And I need to learn more about this. And granted, 18 years ago, it wasn't as big of sustainability was not as big a part of the conversation when it comes to restaurants or even just our daily lives as it is now. But for me, that was the real turning point, because I had been involved in some other campaigns. There was a period of time where swordfish were really in trouble on the East Coast. And we ran a little campaign out of the restaurant I was working at in downtown to try to keep people from serving swordfish, also Chilean sea bass. There was a time when that was very much endangered. And we were involved. I was involved in that effort as well. But I hadn't really taken it to heart, I think, the way I do now. And that review from Caroline Bates was the turning point for me.
Wow.
That's why it's important to always keep on top of all that information, because a lot of people will say, I can't believe you're eating bluefin tuna, it's terrible. But if you get it from a fishery in the US, it's a pretty good product right now.
Yeah.
Or like it is in Quebec, it's a very good product also, but it can be that product in different locations too. So it's really important to know exactly where you're taking your fish from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very precisely. Like a boat can be good and another boat can be not good.
True.
Hi.
Okay.
So Chef, building on sustainability, do you have any fears about the future of our fishing industry with overfishing at all? And I know fish aren't going to be available during parts of years, and it's going to keep dwindling if the whole world doesn't contribute, not just America.
Yeah. I do have fears about that, but I have fears that are of a much more overarching problem, which is, global warming.
Right.
As as the earth warms, the seas warm. Also, the seas are suffering from acidification, which is a real problem in our oceans, and that's also due to climate change. Already we're feeling the effects of that. You see, this year California closed for king salmon. Washington closed for king salmon for part of the year. Oregon closed for part of the salmon for king salmon for part of the year. There were talks, as a matter of fact, there was an environmental group, I think it's called Save Wild Salmon, that sued the state of Alaska to try to close down the salmon fishery this year. That was more of a political play, because there is a sustainable harvest up there. But in California, there are many reasons why we might have trouble with the king salmon harvest. Not the least of which being not over harvesting, but conditions on land. So many of our rivers in California are dammed, and salmon are an anadromous fish, which means that they spawn in fresh water and then migrate out to the sea. So if salmon can't get back up to the rivers that they were born in, then they can't reproduce. And also, when we have drought conditions, as we've had in recent years in California, you'll see a smaller salmon return, because if the salmon can't get up the rivers, not because they're dammed, but because there's not enough water in those rivers, then they can't reproduce. And so when you have a drought year, it's common that 3 or 4 years later, you can have a really poor salmon return. And that's what happened most likely this year. with the California king salmon. That's just like one example, but there's examples like that all around the country. But there's always good news too. Like in California in January, there's going to be all sorts of new fishing grounds that are going to reopen that have been closed since the early 2000s to protect a fish called the cow cod, which is like a ground fish that we have here in California. And that species had dwindled to the point where there was an all-out moratorium on the commercial and sport harvest of that fish. And in order to protect them, they closed down all sorts of areas where fishermen could no longer fish, be it a sport boat or a commercial boat. But all those areas are reopening in January. So there are always success stories, especially in the United States, where the majority of our catch is caught within regulation. So yeah, I mean, I have all sorts of worries about those kinds of things. But really, the biggest threat facing all of us, and not just the fisheries, but is, our very existence, is global warming.
Yeah. So it's basically all about being able to adapt.
Being able to adapt, yes. Yeah. But I mean, like I said, global warming, that's the thing. I think our fisheries can remain healthy if they're monitored as successfully as they have been here in the United States over the last many decades. But like, if we don't do something about global warming, none of it matters.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that there's a very big clout when it comes to the fisheries are bad, then the situation is really horrible. And there are a lot of bad fisheries out there, but it's also not as doom and gloom that people are saying, in my opinion. There's a lot of work that needs to be made, don't get me wrong. There's a big study that came out a few years ago that said there would be no fish by 2048. That study was not true. It was debunked, it was retracted actually. According to the UN, there's still 70% of fish and seafood that are caught in a sustainable way. Does that mean you have to sit back on your ass and do nothing about it? No, of course not. There is, again, a lot of work to be done, but in my opinion, I think that there's not enough that has been talked about the positive things that are being done. And I think that would encourage people to, like Michael mentioned earlier, what you buy really makes a difference. And then if we knew what's being done right, then we would know what to do. And when you have documentaries like Seaspiracy or saying everything is just wrong, everything is so bad, then the reality thing is, will people eat less fish? Probably not. But then now, as a consumer, you go to grocery stores, like, why would I pay $2 more for the one that's an eco label or that's actually responsibly caught? Because I saw on TV that actually it makes no difference. They're all terribly bad. So I think the biggest thing about sustainability these days is how also it became very, very overused, and how we really have to try to use logic now to try to draw the limits between where it became politics. And there's also, I'm sorry to say this, but there's also a kind of a self-righteousness that comes to it. Everybody's like, everything is bad, and we need to understand really what's happening. We need to have clear and very honest and viable discussions of what needs to be done, right? And as Michael have been saying, there's a lot of solutions, there's a lot of things that you can do as a person to make things better. And we need to talk about those. We need to talk about viable solutions that we can have, because we can say everything is bad and kind of pat ourselves on the back by saying that we said stuff like that. Oh, you put a photo on Instagram saying that things are bad, or you shared a photo of of a dolphin dying somewhere. It's what you do on a daily basis that makes a difference. And it's being willing to also discuss opinions that are not necessarily yours. So I think it's very important to have those difficult conversations. And this is what's going to create change in the end. Because if you just tell yourself that everything is bad and nothing is ever going to get better, then you're never going to make a difference.
Thank you.
Yeah, very true. Did we have one more question or one more? Yeah, one more. Okay.
Well, Chef had all the questions, so I think you already answered my other question. So Valentine, this is for you. You had an accident when you were younger in the ocean. What urged you to get back into the water?
The food.
Okay.
I didn't fall in love. So my accident is when I was 14. I got caught by an underwater current and I passed out underwater. I got rescued by a lifeguard. I was luckily there. I didn't swim in the ocean for about 10 years. I did not fall in love with spearfishing. I hated it for probably the first 2 years when I started doing it. I was so panicky in the water. I was looking to see if the boat was next to me. I was not comfortable in the slightest. So if you think you could never do what I do, I promise you, you can. And it was really just about kind of working on that, because the ocean is a very humbling place for many reasons. It doesn't matter how athletic you are. It doesn't matter how much money you have. If you're facing a shark, is your mental strength that getting you out of there. It's not underwater. You give up your strength, you give up your speed, you give up anything that you have as a human, basically. So it's really just about the way you're going to react. And as somebody who's been anxious my whole life, that I had panic attacks when I was younger, all that stuff, I never imagined that I could do something like this. But the first day that I actually was face to face with a shark in the water, I didn't panic. I didn't panic because I kind of knew at that moment that if I panic, probably going to get eaten. So it's kind of, you realize very quickly that how when you're facing difficult situations that you're always going to be much stronger than you think that you would be. And that actually helped a lot with anxiety, because I realized, oh, wow, I'm not just a little girl scared of my shadow anymore. I can see a shark and be like, just get out of my way. This is my fish, and try to push it away. And it's just by putting yourself in new situations that you kind of evolve just as about who you are, but who you think you are too, as a person. And I grew up downtown Montreal, so it's not like I ever fished or hunted or did anything. And then again, I was scared of my own shadow growing up. So, and then now it's by doing spearfishing, I found myself on the water and I could track a fish for hours. And I was like, who am I? And then I discovered who I was as a species, a Homo sapien species, rather than just a woman from Montreal type of thing. And it was really fascinating. And then you sometimes you think that by taking a life in the wild that you would feel, I did cry my first time, I'm not gonna lie, but it was, you discovered something about your, not just who you are too, but also your relationship with nature and things that are around you and animals and your new place too. And you can think that because I do take life that I don't respect nature, but it's actually the opposite. I have an immense respect for what I eat. I would never let a fish rot in my fridge because I know exactly what it took. I had to fight 4 sharks for it, and I had to risk my life freediving, which is a much bigger risk than actually the shark. And the same thing with hunting, it's when you pull a trigger on something, you respect that animal in a way that you would never by buying a steak at a store. So then you develop this connection with nature that makes you respect what you have in your fridge. And that's also why I started cooking all part of my fish too, is because it's like, oh, I just took this fish, so now I need to make sure I respect it as much as possible. So it was a long journey of discovering a lot of things about myself and just human species that we are, and anxiety and mental strength and stuff like that, and who I thought I was, and I'm way less of a wuss that I thought I was.
Wonderful. Any final thoughts, Chef?
I think she has a question.
Oh, sorry, Joy. My apologies.
It's fish. When you have good fish that's really fresh, you don't need a lot. And when people ask me what's my favorite way to cook fish, it's skin on, fried in with a pan, good olive oil, Mount salt, and lemon juice. And then that's it, because that's all you need to make a fantastic fish. It's all about the quality. I can eat a fish that I caught, and I could eat it with a spoon on the boat. It's really about the quality of the fish more than anything. Then again, that's kind of what I try to explain in the book, is you can also use fish a lot like meat. Fish is way more versatile than that people would think it is. And it's just about try it. Use it like meat too, as much as you can. But don't overcook it, because that's just...
Don't overcook it, right? Any final thoughts, Chef? Valentine, that was excellent what you were talking about. Wrap it up here.
I mean, for me, I just think, just understand that the choices that you make in the kitchen, that those choices like amount to your voice. in this world. If you're like me and you're going to want to spend the next 35 years in the kitchen, as I have, at this point, like you need to exercise that voice. Whether it's by, sitting in a forum like this, talking to your peers, or whether it's, writing a book as well I did, or, showing up on a television show or whatever it is. But like, understand that you have a voice, use it for good. And also understand that like even little decisions that you make have larger implications in this world, and try to be aware of that, and try to make choices that are a net positive for the world that we live in.
Thank you. Do you have any final thoughts?
I guess I would finish by saying also whenever you do what Michael said, it doesn't matter where it is. And the biggest advice that I can give people is don't care what people are thinking about your choices. And that includes, sadly, your parents or your partner or anything like that. If you want to try something, it has to be realistic. Like if you're 5 foot and decide to be in an MBA, please don't do that. But if it's something that's actually realistic, just go for it. Doesn't matter. And if your boyfriend or your girlfriend doesn't support you, change boyfriend or change girlfriend. Just keep going forward. And at the end of the day, you're the only person who's going to make you happy in life. It's you and nobody else. So you have to keep doing that. Everybody make fun of me when I quit my job in a hedge fund to become a professional spearfisher-woman. And now, 7 years later, I've managed to make more money than all of them. So it's really about, if you work hard at whatever you believe in, you're going to achieve something. Just put the work into it. Don't care about what people are saying. And if you can, stay off social media.
Excellent. Thank you both very much. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was
Thank you.
excellent. Wonderful.